husband. She became his wife. And the next child she conceived was Solomon. And Solomon, like the beginning of the word Solemn or Shalom, means peaceable. He was a peaceable man. And in his life, his days, Israel was not surrounded by the Philistines in warfare. They were not engaged in constant warfare and combat with the other nations around them. God gave them peace. Therefore, he was free to focus his attention on building the temple of God, building the king's palace, and increasing the prominence of Israel among the nations. But he was the successor to the throne and builder of the temple. And he says in verse 4, he taught me. His father taught, he said, my father taught me. Well, what did he teach me? He taught him to get wisdom, according to verse 5, and to forsake her not, according to verse 6. Back in chapter 3, I think verse 18, he wrote, happy is everyone that retaineth her, forsake her not. Here he's still using that imagery of wisdom, being a beautiful woman, a wise woman, a God-fearing woman, a helpful woman, an instructive woman, one that every young man should seek after. And he's tried to paint this contrast between a wisdom being like a beautiful woman that every man ought to be attracted to, and foolishness, like a streetwalker, every man ought to shun, everybody ought to avoid. And, Solomon's pretty wise. He was a mixed-up young man. He had 1,000 wives. So he wasn't perfect in understanding, not at first. But he was one given to lust as a king. He would see a beautiful woman. He's a king. He's got riches and wealth and fame. And who wouldn't want their daughter to marry the king? He was collecting wives just right and left. And a lot of it because of his own lust, his own flesh, and pride entering into it, thinking there's nothing that the king can't do, nothing that the king can't accomplish or get away with. He had to learn the hard way that one wife is sufficient. One wife whom he loves and who loves him was enough. When you get to the Song of Solomon, or Solomon's Song, 2 books later. A man like David certainly had some things to teach his son. David had a child or baby die, as I just mentioned to you. He had a son murdered. That was Amnon, named Amnon. Amnon was the son who raped his stepsister from one of David's other wives. And her brother took vengeance on him and eventually killed him because of it, sometime later. He had another son killed in a military battle. That's Absalom. And he himself had to face the charges of murder and adultery when it came to Bathsheba and Uriah the Hittite, her husband. So a man who came through all of that successfully and victorious in a number of military battles by the grace of God, that kind of man has learned a lot of things in life. And he's learned some wise things worth knowing, worth remembering to impart to his son. Verse 7 of our text says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Wisdom, just the accumulation of facts, that's not wisdom. That's not true wisdom. You don't know how to apply it. You don't know how it applies to you, how to put it into practice, and to make the most of it, make the best of it for your own sake and the sake of the future. In the Revised Standard Version, which is sort of reverse, it changes this verse to read, the beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. That doesn't make any sense. The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, wisdom in itself is the end-all, be-all thing that everyone should focus on. By doing that, the translators of that Bible admit, basically, that they do not fear God. They have no fear of God. That wisdom and their own intelligence is the end, the absolute goal to which everyone should aspire. Look at chapter 9 and verse 10. Proverbs 9 and verse 10 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. Back in chapter 1, verse 7, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And I think in chapter 8, also, verse 13, it says, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate, God says. But accumulating knowledge and information just for that sake alone, to say, I've got more than you've got, and I know more than you have, that doesn't indicate wisdom. It doesn't show wisdom at all. There are a lot of people who have a lot of degrees, earned degrees on the wall, that don't have much good judgment about much else. It's unfortunate that a guy or girl will spend years in college to pursue a particular degree, but they don't have any true wisdom. They may end up having a dull personality. Nobody likes them. No one wants to be around them. Yeah, but they've got a lot of degrees. They don't know how to get along with people. And yet people who may not be well educated can surpass them in a number of those areas. They know that it's prudent to be cautious. For example, when you're on the freeway, you don't have to have a lot of degrees to know that. You just have to have some common sense and some good judgment. And yet the person with a lot of degrees, he might think he's so cool, he's so everything, he can afford the fastest car, and he wants to prove it when he gets on the road. And he gets pulled over, time and again. The guy's got no wisdom. He might have earned enough to afford the more expensive car than me, but I know to stay within the speed limit. Don't. You want to drive by and wave at those kinds of people when you see them pulled over. A lot of people that have a lot of education, but they don't have any wisdom, or not any practical wisdom. Verse 8 is self-explanatory. It says, exalt her, and she shall promote thee. She shall bring thee to honor when thou dost embrace her. No man was ever sorry that he sought after good judgment and good advice before he made a decision, pursued some business venture, some action. Nobody was ever sorry or regretted that they asked counsel from other people who had done it before. They went to, I was thinking about this morning, I don't know why this thought came to me. I was looking at the hardwood floors in our house, and they were pretty rough, and the people that were in the house before us had painted all the walls, and they never did put a drop cloth down. They painted all the walls, and there was paint all over the floors. And they just carpeted over it and covered it up. So when we realized we had hardwood floors, we pulled the flooring up. And I looked at this. This is a pretty big job. I've never done anything like this before to refinish it myself. I couldn't afford to hire a professional to do it. But a guy down the street, at the other end of the block, he had done it himself. So you go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, and they got the floor sander. It's pretty easy to use, and they've got video to give you step-by-step instructions on how to do it. It tells you exactly what materials you need, how to prep it and get it ready. And then I had a friend, Randy Chapman, who had refinished floors in the past. He had done this. He's sort of one of these guys that's uniquely talented. He can teach himself some particular trade just by doing it, jumping in and doing it. And it's not long, but he's got the thing down. My brother is that way. I'm all thumbs. I don't know what I'm doing. But so Randy came and helped me, and I asked my neighbor, hey, let me borrow that video, and I watched it and learned what was involved. And so if I had tried this on my own, I'd still be working on it. This has been 10 years ago, or 8 years ago. But fortunately, it came out not half bad, and because I'm not sorry that I asked them for help or asked them for advice. So verse 8 is pretty self-explanatory. Verse 9 in our text says, she shall give to thine head an ornament of grace, a crown of glory shall she deliver to thee. Back in chapter 1, verse 9, he says something similar. For they, that's wisdom and instruction, they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. You take pride, and any wisdom that you possess or any good judgment you have or people perceive in you is just something that causes your name, your reputation to be well spoken of among other people, because, hey, she knows what she's doing. He knows what he's doing. And they never rush into something without planning it, thinking about it first.